Okay, we are on the phone with James Sparks. James Sparks is somebody that I hold near and dear. That's somebody that really knows John Wayne Gacy. I'm showing you on the screen. James Sparks has an Instagram called Visits with Gacy. And he's just got great content. And if you really want to know about John Wayne Gacy, James Sparks, in my opinion, is the man. He's met with him 11 times. He helped him with some of his projects. So, James, we are on the phone with you right now, and it's so good to have you on here. And tell me, how in the hell do you end up forming a friendship with the serial killer who killed 33 people? How does that start?
It doesn't start easy. My, I guess, relationship / visitation role with Gacy started back in 1992. And that was after I had watched a presentation on WGN out of Chicago. They did a mini-series on John Gacy called To Catch a Killer.
Oh,
where Brian Dennehy played Gacy.
Yes.
So I watched it. It was a 2-night series. And then at the end of the second night, WGN ran a special on Gacy. And what they were doing is they had all the experts come on. I think some of the prosecutors were there. Maybe his defense attorneys were there. And towards the end of the program, they showed a response from Gacy. And what it was a letter from him. You basically talking about he didn't approve of WGN putting out To Catch a Killer. And what I did, I had taped the special as well as the To Catch a Killer. And what I did is whenever they showed his letter, I froze the screen and actually wrote down the address.
Oh, wow.
And then the very next day, I was going back and forth. Do I want to write him a letter? What do I want to do? And I decided to pen a letter and basically sent it off. Mm-hmm. And probably within 5 to 7 days, I got a response from John. And at first, I didn't know what to think because it wasn't delivered to the house I was living in. I actually got a notice from the postal carrier, and he said, "Hey, you got something at the main branch. You need to go pick it up." And I was like, "Oh, what is this?" Because I had no idea it was going to be Gacy. Because I honestly, I didn't think I'd ever hear back from him.
Right.
So I go to the post office, and I literally had to pay them. Oh, Phil, it was probably under a quarter. Mm-hmm. It was postage owed on the letter from John Gacy.
He didn't send enough postage.
No, he didn't, because he was always sending all kinds of other things in, letters. So yeah. I paid the, whatever it was, 23 cents or something like that. Got the letter, got home, and started reading. And the letter was sort of, I guess, antagonistic at first. He was like, you seem to think you know everything about the case. Oh. I've got proof that I'm innocent. And mm-hmm. I went through the letter. I was like, okay, I'm going to write him back and say, well, if you got proof, then show it to me.
Let's do this, right?
The letter, he mentioned the letter. He goes, I got proof, and he offered for the visit. And I said, yeah. So, wrote him back. He said, I told him, I said, let's plan this. Mm-hmm. He said, sure. Then sent back some dates. And then shortly after that, probably within a month of receiving that letter, I did my first visit to Menard Correctional Center. You're sitting in front of John Wayne Gacy a month after. You lived in Alabama and you went to Illinois to visit him? Well, at the time, I actually was doing an undergrad in Kentucky. Okay. So I was in Kentucky, and I drove from Kentucky to Illinois. And then during the course of our 2-year, knowing him from up until 94, when I went to grad school in Alabama, I did make a couple of trips from Alabama to Menard. But it first started off when I was in an undergrad at Murray State University.
You met with him 11 times, James. What was he like?
Oh, he was what I always use a term to describe Gacy is he was a malignant narcissist. He was basically, someone who was stuck on himself, liked to be the center of attention. Okay. Wanted to just overemphasize his point, and he was a habitual liar.
Yeah.
He lied, about 99% of the time whenever he was talking about something.
Wow.
And it's one of those things that, in some instances, what I would do is I would go and I would ask him about specifics of the case. And it got to a point where the questions, sometimes I would repeat the questions and I would get a different answer.
Every time.
Yeah, sometimes I would get the same, but it wasn't very often.
So he was just a major liar.
Yes, he was constantly lying.
Well, it was weird. He confessed and gave a confession a couple times when he got arrested. And then he started saying he didn't do this. And what is your thought on that? Is he guilty or not?
Well, in December of 1978, when he was arrested, primarily for the Peast murder, once he was brought in, he started basically it was just like a water faucet. He was confessing about everything.
Right.
And then during the course of being incarcerated, I think they came up with this dual personality or these, Jack John personality, and it wasn't him. And then I think after John had been in prison for those, he's on death row for 14 years. I think over the course of being in prison, I think he probably convinced himself that he wasn't guilty of the murders.
He actually lied so much he believed his own lies.
Yeah, now I did actually read an article, and it was it early this morning or late last night, where now there's some investigation going back into the Gacy case because apparently they're saying now that he did have accomplices.
Yeah, maybe that's why he was saying that, because he didn't do, he would always say, I didn't commit all the murders.
Well, there's a couple of cases. I think Jeffrey Rignall, who was one of the victims that actually lived, he severely tortured him with just a night of living hell.
Yeah.
Rignall swore in his book, and I think even when he gave his testimony on the stand, that there was someone else in the room when John was doing the torturing on him.
Wow. That's something, huh?
Yeah, and then also, it may be where some of the victims, weren't small guys. Gacy was, 5'8", 230, 240, completely out of shape, was not one known for exercise. And it'd be very difficult for someone like him to overpower some young kid who's been working out. Now, granted, if he had the handcuffs and had them, under the influence of alcohol or drugs, it'd be a different story.
So I'm going to rumble now. We're not zooming now, so I'm just going to have to explain to you. But I have a picture I'm showing them of Gacy's boyhood home, a picture of Gacy in his little suit when he was a young boy. What do you know about Gacy's childhood? I mean, did he have a father that was he in a dysfunctional upbringing?
Well, his father, I think his stabilization was his mother. His father was an alcoholic who used to, go down the basement and I guess work on things or do whatever and sort of get away from the family and then come up. And a lot of times he would be just dead drunk. And then, he would take it out on the family. John was probably the butt of many of his father's drunken rants because, he felt that John wasn't, I guess even at a young age, he kind of felt like he wasn't living up to being a boy. He would make fun of him, call him names.
He wasn't a man, right?
Yeah. And his mother was the one who always sheltered him and she protected him.
Yeah. And then John moved to, when he was about 20 years old, he moved to Las Vegas. He worked at a morgue, funeral home, and there was some talk of him crawling into the casket with the dead little boy. Are you familiar with any of that, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, that's whenever he left. He got mad at his dad, took off, went to Las Vegas. I think his first day there, when he got there, he actually had a stroke.
You're kidding?
Got picked up. Yeah, he had a heat stroke or something.
My gosh.
And that's sort of how he ended up at the funeral home. It was an ambulance service, and they're the ones who took him to the hospital. What have you. And he basically asked them for a job to pay off his debt.
Okay.
Now, I asked John specifically about that situation. I said, hey, what about the thing in Las Vegas? Yeah. And he adamantly, denied that completely. He said, I've never, taken part in messing with any dead bodies.
Of course
I worked at the funeral home.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the extent of it. So he denied that. I think there have been other researchers in the early days when he was arrested. And I think he may have admitted saying that he did do something like that. I think it's specifically mentioned in oh, what is it? Tim Cahill and Russ Ewing's book.
Yeah.
I think they specifically mention it there. It may be mentioned briefly in Terry Sullivan's book, The Killer Clown.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I asked John face to face, he completely denied that.
So then he moves to Iowa. I've got a picture of one of his early arrest photos. He gets arrested for sodomy. He's running KFC restaurants. Any thoughts on Gacy during that time? He's married. He's got a couple kids. He's doing well, really.
Yeah, he's also, I guess, hungry for power. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure that his first wife's father liked him. I think he sort of seen him as abrasive. Well, John started running these KFCs, and he had a lot of kids working for him, a lot of guys. And what he did was he set up sort of like a club at his house where the kids could come play pool and drink and watch stag films. And then the information that I've read, and John was real hesitant to talk about Iowa as well, but what I've read and done research on is that once he got there, he started, I guess, feeling like, I guess he wanted to, experiment with the boys. And he started telling these kids that worked for him that he was under contract or doing work for the governor of Illinois on a sex study.
Okay.
And what John was doing was John was offering them money for, I think it was about $50 for them to either let him have oral sex with them or vice versa. Wow. And then there's rumors saying that he and his wife were swingers. I don't know that for a fact, but there were rumors, and I think it was mentioned throughout whenever when he went to trial for messing with the kid who was actually the son of one of his friends in the JC.
Right.
That he had done this. Now, John did say, when I talked to him about that, we talked about his kids because, his first wife, and he had two children, I think a boy and a girl. And I was talking about, what was that like? He said he was a proud father, but then he goes and then talks about the night that his wife was giving birth to his son, and he said he's not even at the hospital, that he ended up going out with a friend, and that's whenever he said that he had his first experience with men as far as sex was concerned.
Wow.
And he said, it was nothing above the belt. There was no love involved, and, it felt good, so why not go along with it?
So he gets in trouble there. He gets arrested for sodomy. He does some time. He goes to Anamosa, and then he gets paroled after 18 months and moves to Chicago, and I have a picture of his house he buys with his mom. And he's doing well there. He gets married again. He's involved in politics. He's doing the clown stuff. He meets the president's wife. Things are good. He starts a company called PDM, Painting, Decorating, Maintenance, and here's his vehicle. Talk about that time period, James. He seems like he's recovered and he's doing well.
Well, let's back up just a second before we punt and mention that at Anamosa, he was given a 10-year sentence. And he, like you said, he only did 18 months of a 10-year sentence on sodomy on a minor, which is disturbing within itself.
If he would have been locked up for 10 years, a lot of this stuff may not have happened, right?
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So he does get paroled. He has to live with his mother. He, borrows some money from her to start a business, and everything's going well. I think he meets Carol, who was actually someone that he knew from high school. I think it was one of his sister's friends. And
it was. Yeah.
She's got two little girls that he just thinks the world of, and they become a family. And, during the course of this is whenever he starts his, I guess, process of picking up strangers at bus stations and what have you, and then starts killing. And he did. What's funny about the whole situation, I visited John 11 times, and it was not until the last visit that he started talking about killing the first victim.
Wow.
And he started talking about it was self-defense, and I said, John, I just don't understand. If it was self-defense, why didn't you call the police?
Right.
And he goes, it was all about that thing in Iowa. He couldn't even mention that it was a sodomy charge. He just kept referring to it as
thing in
that
Iowa.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other disturbing thing is that whenever John was paroled and sent to Chicago, it's my understanding that some of the paperwork got messed up.
Okay.
So his name was not really listed as John Wayne Gacy. It was like John Wayne Gary or something like that.
Oh, really?
Which every time they sort of ran records,
Yeah.
He didn't come up because, if you do your homework on this case, you'll know that he had a couple of sexual assault cases and charges while he was paroled.
Right.
And actually, a couple of them had come about before he was granted parole, and Iowa knew nothing about it. Had they found out, I'm sure they would have revoked it, and he would have been back in prison, serving that full 10 years.
Wow. So he gets involved in clowning, and we're looking at a picture of Pogo the Clown, James, the famous Pogo the Clown, and also Patches the Clown. Yes. This is kind of what he's known for. What's your take on Pogo and Patches, James?
Yeah, Pogo was his, alter ego. I said, what does Pogo stand for? And he says, I'm Polish and I'm on the go. Therefore, I came up with Pogo.
That's funny.
So he liked to do that. And then Patches is a clown that, if you look at it, it's sort of a plaid work on his outfit compared to the stripes on Pogo.
Right.
And Patches is a clown that he would get dressed up as, and he actually had an endorsement from a local Chicago ice cream company.
Whoa.
Where he would, that he's in one they're at. I think actually, if you look at the February 1979 Life magazine, in the centerfold, there is a photo of John Wayne Gacy in full Patches makeup. And I can't remember the name of the ice cream company, Breyers or something like that. But a balloon, and it says home of the 33 flavors.
Wow.
Which is kind of odd because, 33 is what we know of for a fact.
Whoa.
So, back to that, John would actually dress up as a clown, and he did entertain, he did parties, but he also went to hospitals and did magic trips for sick kids.
That's cool.
So
I'm going to just go through a few photos, and you and I have looked at these before. John Wayne Gacy sitting in a hospital bed. What was that photo all about?
That is when he got transferred to Cermak Hospital, because when he was arrested, they had found him, I think, in one of the cells where he was underneath one of the bunks. Okay. And he had towels wrapped around his neck, and I think that they thought he was going to try to commit suicide. So they shipped him over to the hospital for evaluation.
Watch. Okay.
Yes.
And then I have a picture of a drawing of him, and you said it's pretty rare. He drew his whole house in his shed in his garage. Remember that marker drawing?
Yes.
What do you know about that? 8213 Summerdale. It's a drawing signed by John Wayne Gacy. What is that all about, James?
That is actually, he's doing a rendition of his house, and it was taken from that murder case book that was out of the UK.
Okay.
And if you look through that, and you can find them on eBay and places like that. I think it was by Cavendish Publishers. Okay. What they did is they did a series of true crime books, and that's on Gacy. And basically, they have a factual photo of the house. What's unique about that drawing is it is based on the photo in the murder case book, and it was the only time that you really seen a full sort of picture artist, vision of the house in full with the garage and everything. Yeah. And that's why John drew it, and that's why it's so rare, because he's done other things about that. I think I've seen a painting that was a full house, an aerial view, or, with a clown in the corner, whatever. And there's some ungodly price, like $150,000 for it or something like that. Wow. But yeah, that was one of the first times that he did a full drawing of 8213 Summerdale, which was his residence.
So now I'm showing the group a questionnaire. If you're going to be running with John Wayne Gacy and visit him, you got to fill out this questionnaire, your name and all your what's your favorite singer and all your stuff. Did you fill one of those out before you went and visited him?
I did. It was actually just sort of like he used that, I guess, to said that he would get to know you, and he may ask you questions about it. I could ask your political affiliation, your religious views, your favorite food. Yeah. I think it mentions his favorite artist, and I think what was so funny about that the first time I read it, I think it had Sam Fear, the pan flutist, on there. Mm-hmm. And then he was talking about his art and things like that. But he actually liked people to fill out that sort of questionnaire so he'd have an idea of who was visiting or who he was riding with. And
we had showed some of his sexual jokes that he would send out. There's a beach rape joke drawing that he would send out, and a road runner where beep beep, he's strangling coyote strangling road runner. Did you get any of his jokes mailed to you?
I've got a few of them. They were really, sort of vulgar. John thought that was, funny to talk about that. He really didn't discriminate when he did those things, because I think that I know a gal that he wrote to, and he would send her those same sort of vulgar jokes.
So he just did that. He sent that to everybody.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things that would just, sent to certain people. He sort of sent that out. Once he, I guess, figured that he had a pen pal relationship with someone, he would do that. Yeah.
And I've got a picture here of a TV Guide cover of The Big To Catch a Killer. He hated that they were running that on TV. He hated that, didn't he?
Yes, he actually wrote a letter to Brian Dennehy talking about, there was nothing factual about that. And I actually asked John about that. I said, well, what's true about the movie? And he says, well, they got my name right, and I think they got PDM right. Other than that, it's all fake.
So he just denied the whole thing.
No, and I'm going to tell you, that was the thing about it, is Brian Dennehy did a phenomenal job.
Did he?
And honestly, yeah, that first visit, whenever I walked into prison and once I signed in and was cleared, I expected to see some big guy like Brian Dennehy. And let me tell you, when John Gacys was in the doorway of the visiting room, it was not the same thing. It was not what I was expecting.
Is he like smaller than you thought?
Oh, yeah. He was short and he was heavy set.
Yeah.
He was really loud. He was yelling at the guards and cursing at them.
The guards hated him, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. They anytime we were in a visit with John and he would get up from the table, and people see these things on TV like they have this idea that you're separated by glass and stuff like that. In some institutions you are, but when I visited him at Menard on death row, we actually were sitting at a kitchen table. He had handcuffs on and we'd sit across the table from each other.
Gotcha.
But any time that John got up or moved about, those guards were coming through that door. So they were going to see.
They didn't play.
Oh, and there would be times whenever, when you'd go, you could get, a Polaroid photo with him. Mm-hmm. And there would be times whenever we'd ask for a photo and they would say they were out. And then you could hear some of the other visiting rooms that were before ours, they were in there taking pictures. So it's like they didn't want to fool with Gacy.
They just didn't like him.
No, not at all.
There's two books that I have in my possession, or at least copies of them. One is called The Pogo Files. The Pogo Files, I think you had something to do with.
Yes.
What is the Pogo Files?
It's just a collection of pieces about Gacy. I think there's actually a copy of the confession statement in there as well. And there's various letters that he would send out to the warden and other people involved in the case. And it was primarily geared towards when he was in prison, he was trying to run a business, basically, with his art business.
Okay.
And he was always getting in trouble about that. And he was just, writing back and forth to the administration about it. Like I said, I think I put a confession statement, and then some people over the years have added things to it. But if you take time to read that confession statement, you can see that he provided full details in December of 1978 about the crimes. There's no doubt about that.
And that's in there.
Yes.
There's another book that he wrote, and you were familiar with this, and I have a good copy of this with the names redacted. It's called The Question of Doubt, and I have the original. Oh my gosh, it's huge. Yes. What is A Question of Doubt?
Question of Doubt is John Gacy's take on his case. It was originally called The 34th Victim, and then he changed it to A Question of Doubt. The 34th victim sort of being that he was the 34th victim because he wasn't responsible for any of the crimes. Mm-hmm. And then he changed it to A Question of Doubt. And it was something that he was working on while he was in prison. And remember before he was executed, they were in the process, he and some publishers were putting out like deluxe copies of this book that had like a slipcase and a cover that had Pogo the Clown. And then inside of it was a signed letter from John Gacy professing his innocence, and they had numbered editions.
Wow.
So it was basically his biography of what happened during the case. The original version, and you may have the original version, I think it has the real names
that's
that
what I
weren't cut out. Yeah. Whereas I think if you get the slipcase edition today, the names are changed or altered, so you can't find out who those people actually were.
We have a couple drawings that he did of the skull clowns with different hats. So he was asking somebody, what do you think of this one or this one? So he did some clowns, but he also did some darker stuff. We have a drawing of Ed Gein. We have a marker drawing. It looks like of Hitler.
Yes.
He did different serial killers and personalities like that, right? Dillinger and stuff like that.
Dillinger, Capone, Hitler. He did Elvis. He did Gein. He did the Zodiac.
Wow, really?
Yeah, he did, of course, himself. He did Christ, young Elvis, old Elvis.
And then he went into like Bambi and the Seven Dwarfs. Talk about the Seven Dwarfs are the most famous. I'm showing paintings of the Seven Dwarfs. Tell us why the Seven Dwarfs and why is this important in the Gacy story?
Well, the Seven Dwarfs are actually, I think, sort of a reflection of him. And I've actually seen one the other day where actually Gacy is the Doc character, and it's called Seven Dwarfs in the Crawl Space. So I think there's probably some subliminal messages, if you will, in regards to those paintings regarding Gacy. And it's like the Seven Dwarfs were always like in the mine or dark places.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a reflection of his crime. Some of the paintings you can actually see some of the, I guess, emphasis on the crime. Sometimes you'll see the number 33, not bold or blatant, but if you look for it, you'll see threes within it.
Wow.
Which is unique that most people don't know about.
Wow.
It's and Gacy was he had a fondness for, I guess, Walt Disney and the characters.
Okay.
Every once in a while, you will see a Snow White in the Seven Dwarfs picture, and so the Snow White is very rare. And I think that when you do find that, you'll probably see that that's Gacy is actually Snow White, is my interpretation of that. And that the Seven Dwarfs may be the police that was working on the case.
Oh my goodness.
And it's one of those unique sort of things. And John did other things. He also did the Sex Clown, which is a skull that actually is made up of all these various sexual organs and sexual positions.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Yeah, he did like this witch. He's done Mickey Mouse.
I'm showing Happy the Clown right now. Talk about Happy. Yeah. What's Happy the Clown?
Happy the Clown is probably just one of those clowns. And I remember the photo. He did a series of clowns, just like one name clowns that he did. And it was his interpretation. It almost looked like cheap ripoffs of Emmett Kelly. And I know that he did Emmett Kelly clowns as well. But he would do that. I guess for his love of clowns, he just did a whole series of different clowns.
I just obtained this piece. I told you about this, James. It's a marker drawing of his handprint and his picture in Pogo, and he's got his red handprint in paint. Is that pretty rare?
Yeah, that's pretty rare. John didn't do a whole lot of marker drawings. Some people say that he didn't do any, and that's not true. He did, because I'd been on visits before when he did one. So as far as people saying that he didn't do that, that's not true. Especially towards the end, he was sort of had just doing paintings constantly and drawings and everything. I guess he was trying to just get as much money as possible.
And people would do art. I just showed a flyer for art shows. He has like a price list where he would actually, have a price list. Were you involved at all in his selling of his artwork? I know Rick Staten was, but were you involved as well?
He asked me if any of my buddies when I was in school wanted paintings, and I would have my buddies buy them from him. So I actually sold some of them to some of the guys that I knew. Yeah. I probably sold 15, 20, if not more, paintings for him. Okay. But, we're talking about back in those days, we're talking about 25, 30, $50 at the most.
And what would he do with the money? What would he do with the money, James? What would John Wayne Gacy do with the money?
That would go into his fund, I guess, to buy other art supplies. And I think that he was probably sending money out to relatives, but he also was using the money to work on his defense, because those attorneys were still charging him.
What did he buy in prison? Somebody said he liked to eat, smoke cigars. What did he use his money in commissary for? What did he like to do?
Other than the art supplies, he would use it for snacks, and he was a big cigar smoker.
And he could smoke cigars in prison at that time.
Yeah, you could in prison at that time. At the time, I used to smoke, and on a visit, he would bring to the visiting room, he would always bring prison cigarettes for us to smoke.
And you would smoke?
Yeah, he never, years ago when I did, yeah, he never smoked cigars on a visit, but when he would come in, you could smell the cigars on the clothing.
So you could
And
tell.
to this day, when I smell that smell, I sort of cringe and get nauseous because I could smell the cigar smoke, and it was a blend between cigar smoke and baby oil.
Ew.
And I don't know if that's what he put on his hair or not, but I remember, when we first had our kids, and I never liked baby oil because that smell would remind me of going to that prison.
Did he ever make any sexual advances at you, James?
He would make inappropriate comments, and I say, "Hey, I'm straight. I'm not up for that. I don't care what you do, but I'm not flying with that. That's not how I roll, and you need to realize that right now." Did you
guys eat together when you visited?
Oh yeah, whenever we would go to visit, what I would do is I would always stop by the vending machine and get like candy bars and those Lancashire sandwiches and Cokes and stuff and candy and bring it to him. And what he would do is what the guys did on the row is a lot of times when the other folks had visits, they would give up their trays so the person who was having visitors that day could have the trays delivered to his visitors.
Oh.
So yeah, there were several times we would always eat, and there was a lot of food. I remember that. I remember one time they had chicken, and it was fried chicken, and there had to be 6 or 7 pieces of fried chicken in one of those little like styrofoam canisters. Then you always got a vegetable, some sort of like cake. It was like fruit punch or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, we sat down and ate together.
Was Menard a scary place?
Menard was old and smelly, and I guess when you look at it from the first time I remember going into the premises, it was very, very intimidating.
Wow. So now that Gacy's gone, how has this affected your life? What are you doing now? And does it have any impact on your daily life as a worker, as a family member?
Well, my primary emphasis, my day job, I work in the juvenile justice field and have been for close to 25 years. But I do teach a serial homicide course, and I've been teaching serial homicide courses for close to 18, 19 years now.
Wow.
And I'm actually working on a textbook right now where I include Gacy in one of the chapters. It's a case study profile on serial murders that I'm going to use as an accompanying text to my class. Wow. But I talk about Gacy. Sometimes I've asked to give lectures about him and just talk about my experience with him and what kind of killer he was and what have you like that. Sometimes I'll go weeks without somebody asking me questions, but now with my Instagram page, I get a lot of inquiries from people all over the world asking about him, what was he like and stuff like that. Usually, most of the time, people are really nice, but every once in a while, you'll get some people that are,
I can't believe you're talking to this sicko killer, right?
Yeah, well, nothing like that. It's just they ask some odd questions. And like one time, I got a request. People asked if I visited him. I said, yeah. And they kept on and they go, it was, I don't remember who it was from. It was some overseas. And he's like, get auto. And I was like, I couldn't understand what it was. And they finally, I guess, had someone translate it. And they're like, can I get your autograph? And I was like, I'm the last person you
that's so
you don't want my autograph. I said, why would anybody want my autograph?
So James, he was executed on May 9th, 1994, which is a lot later than I thought.
May 10th.
May 10th? Okay. Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah. May 9th is his last meal. Sorry. May 10th is his execution. When's the last time you saw him before May 10th?
I visited him. My last visit with John was on April 1st, 1994.
So within 5 weeks, you saw him.
Yeah, we talked on the phone a couple weeks after my visit, and then I got a letter from him. I think it was on 4/25, and then after that, it ceased. Now I truly believe, and I can never prove this because it was so many years ago.
Yeah,
that I didn't get something that John sent me.
Yeah,
and the reason I say that was prior to the execution, where I was living at the time.
Yep.
The postal carrier one day told me that I shouldn't be getting letters from people like that.
Oh.
And I told him that he needed to mind his own business.
Right.
And then shortly after that, things started disappearing.
Oh,
And I eventually had to go down to the main post office and say something about it. I was like,
wow.
it doesn't matter who I get letters from.
Yeah.
But I really believe that I didn't get something that he sent me towards the last couple of weeks of his life.
Damn. Well, I'm sure you got a nice little collection of stuff, and as you know, it's part of history. And thank you so much for talking to us tonight. And this is going to be a great bonus episode of my Gacy series, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'm sure we'll talk again.
Oh, anytime. Thanks, Phil, and thanks, Wendy. And you guys have a great evening.
Thanks so much, man. Have a great day.
All right.